It was a rainy night, and I was driving home from my shift at the late-night diner where I work. The shift had been unusually quiet, but for some reason, I felt a strange amount of energy coursing through me. I knew that once I got home, I would have to take a melatonin to ensure I could fall asleep. My route home was along a scenic road that was beautiful during the day, but eerily dark at night. The road had very few light posts, making long stretches between small parking lots and family-owned stores pitch black. The forest encroached on both sides, adding to the sense of isolation. As I drove, the rain began to pour harder, creating a rhythmic pattern on my windshield. My wipers struggled to keep up, and I squinted to see the road ahead. Just as I passed one of the small parking lots, I noticed something unusual. Under the flickering light post, a woman was standing in the rain, her arm outstretched, waving me down. She was tall and thin, with an air of desperation about her. I slowed down, hesitating for a moment. Picking up strangers was not something I did, but the sight of this woman standing in the cold rain tugged at my conscience. I rolled down my window and asked, "Do you need a ride?" She hurried over, opened the passenger door, and climbed in, thanking me profusely. She looked to be in her mid-50s, soaked to the bone, her clothes clinging to her frail frame. Her hair was plastered to her head, and she was shivering. I couldn't help but notice she was missing a few teeth, which made me wonder if she might be homeless. Despite this, she didn't have the typical signs of homelessness, like an unpleasant odor or unkempt appearance. Perhaps the rain had washed away any clues. "I'm just heading up the road to town," she said, her voice quivering. I nodded and started driving, trying to make small talk to ease the awkwardness. She smiled and seemed genuinely sweet, but there was something off-putting about her appearance. Her toothless grin and gaunt figure made me uneasy, yet I pushed those thoughts aside. We soon approached an intersection with a gas station on one corner. I decided to pull in and fill up the tank. "Do you need anything from inside?" I asked, still feeling the need to be helpful. She declined, so I went inside to pay for the gas and grab some spiked seltzers, thinking about the weekend ahead. When I returned to the car, the woman was gone. I looked around the small lot, but there was no sign of her. She must have run off somewhere. A part of me felt bad, wondering if she was in trouble, but another part of me felt relieved. I finished filling up my tank and drove home, the encounter replaying in my mind. Once home, I hurried inside, eager to get out of the rain. I lived in the first level of a two-family house, with a tenant upstairs. The front door to the foyer was usually left unlocked, but the doors to each apartment were secured. I locked myself in, set the spiked seltzers on the counter, and took a melatonin to help me sleep. Despite the melatonin, I found it hard to fall asleep. My mind kept drifting back to the woman from the gas station. Who was she? Why was she out in the rain? As I lay there, I heard faint sounds coming from outside my bedroom, but I dismissed them as noises from the upstairs tenant. I wished I had been more suspicious. I woke up in the middle of the night, which was unusual for me after taking melatonin. The room was dark, and I felt groggy and thirsty. As I reached for the water bottle on my bedside table, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure was crouched in the corner of my bedroom, partially hidden behind the dresser. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. I shook my head, made strange noises, even slapped myself in the face, but the figure didn't disappear. Instead, it stood up and walked out of the room, moving silently. I didn't scream or say a word. I was frozen in shock. The most disturbing part was that there was no sound of footsteps or a door closing. In a panic, I grabbed my phone and called my dad. He answered, confused and groggy. I told him what I had seen, and he tried to calm me down, suggesting it was just a night terror. I stayed on the phone with him as I slowly became more awake. I left my bedroom and turned on all the lights in the living room. It was a small space, and I quickly confirmed no one else was there. I started to believe that maybe I had imagined it all, but I still locked my bedroom door before trying to sleep again. When morning came, I got up, drank some coffee, and prepared for the gym. As I went to open the door to the foyer, I realized it was already unlocked. My heart sank. What I had seen the night before was real. I did a thorough check of the apartment, confirming no one was inside. Then I went out to my car and opened the back door to put my gym bag inside. That's when I saw the damp, yellow-brownish stains all over the floor. My blanket, which I always kept in the back seat, was gone. I felt a wave of panic and revulsion. I called my dad again, frantically explaining what I had discovered. He advised me to check if anything was stolen and said that without any theft, the police wouldn't do much. I checked the house again and confirmed nothing was missing, except for my blanket. I decided to skip the gym that day. In fact, I stayed holed up in my apartment for days, deeply disturbed by what had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The idea that the woman had somehow sneaked into my car and then into my apartment was too much. After that month, I decided I couldn't stay there any longer. I found a new place to live, hoping to leave that terrifying experience behind. As the days passed, I became increasingly paranoid. I double-checked all the locks on my doors and windows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak and groan of the house set me on edge. I even started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow, just in case. One night, about a week after the incident, I was woken by a loud thud. I sat up, heart pounding, and listened intently. Another thud, followed by the sound of something being dragged. I tiptoed to my bedroom door, clutching the knife, and peered out into the living room. The shadows seemed to shift and move, playing tricks on my eyes. I crept towards the sound, which seemed to be coming from the basement. I rarely went down there, but I knew it was just an empty, unfinished space with some old furniture and boxes. The door to the basement was slightly ajar, and the noises were growing louder. Taking a deep breath, I descended the creaky wooden stairs, the knife shaking in my hand. At the bottom, I fumbled for the light switch and flicked it on. The single bulb cast a dim, flickering light, revealing the cluttered basement. My eyes scanned the room, and I saw nothing out of the ordinary. I let out a sigh of relief, but then I heard it again, a soft, wet dragging sound coming from the far corner. I inched closer, my heart in my throat. As I rounded the corner, I saw her. The woman from the gas station, the one I had given a ride, was huddled in the corner, her eyes wide and vacant. She was dragging a tattered blanket, the one missing from my car, along the floor, leaving a trail of dirt and grime. "How did you get in here?" I demanded, my voice shaking. She didn't respond, just continued to drag the blanket in slow, methodical movements. I was frozen with fear, unable to move or speak. Finally, I managed to back away, stumbling up the stairs and slamming the basement door behind me. I called the police, my hands trembling as I dialed. When they arrived, they searched the basement thoroughly, but found no trace of the woman. They assured me that the house was secure and suggested that I might have been experiencing a vivid nightmare. But I knew what I had seen. The next day, I contacted my landlord and arranged to break my lease. I couldn't stay in that house any longer. Within a week, I had found a new place across town and moved out. I hoped that the distance would help me forget the terrifying experience. In my new apartment, I tried to settle back into a normal routine, but every time it rained, I was reminded of that night. The image of the woman standing in the downpour, waving me down, haunted my thoughts. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, always on edge, always looking over my shoulder. One rainy evening, a few months after I had moved, I was walking home from work. The streets were empty, the air thick with the smell of wet pavement. As I turned the corner to my apartment building, I saw her again. The same woman, standing under a streetlight, her arm outstretched, waving me down. My heart raced, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. She took a step towards me, her eyes locked on mine. I finally found the strength to turn and sprint towards my apartment, fumbling with my keys as I reached the door. I slammed the door shut and locked it.